29 hours per week. That's how much time I'm supposed to have to create. I did a deep dive into my hours in a week, my hours in a month. I mean, like, I went deep. Are you having a hard time finding time to create? I was too. I did a deep dive into this question and I thought, okay, how can I evaluate this? I need to look at all the hours I have. I need to look at what my main objectives are. I need to know what percentage of my studio time or my creative time for the YouTube channel and for the Longarm is supposed to be spent on this task or that task. I was finding it hard to find time to work on my Mars quilt. And I found that there were two reasons for that. But having that question in my head made me do a deep dive that is going to be so helpful for me. I had to sit myself down and say, Dawn, you can do this. You used to work highly productive in multitasking every second. I would multitask the needs of my superiors. I'd multitask 30 to 50 different clients that I had, all their needs. And I would multitask my family needs, my own needs, and then doing just regular work along with that and all the extra stuff that comes about being a parent. I did all that and I did it day in and day out. And I would make a commercial a day doing that for 12 years. Dawn, I think you can figure out how to find time to do the Mars quilt. So what were my stumbling blocks? I've got a spoiler alert for you. At the end of my evaluation of doing a deep dive into my schedule and the amount of time that I have and allocating it here and there, I came up with an amazing number of 29 hours per week of creativity time. Time to be creative, not to do the recording, not to do the editing, not to do the publishing on YouTube or anything, just to be creative. And then I had to ask myself, if I have those 29 hours, and I don't think I've been doing 29 hours of being just creative, just being in the studio, producing, not content for you guys, but, producing. If I wasn't spending 29 hours in the studio piecing and doing things or on the Longarm or whatever it is, where was that time going? Too much of it was going to editing. That was one of them. And the other was a lack of structure. And as you guys know, I had a lot of things go on this summer, and then this fall that created some challenges to having quality time in the studio. And then I changed my studio, and then there was no studio to work in. Yeah, okay, so that's not an excuse anymore. I've got my studio set up well enough. Is it going to continue to tweak and, do things to make it nicer and more functional? Yes. But I set things up in this studio so it could be flexible, and I had different purposes for everything. And that's why I'm sitting behind my sewing machine and this iron here. I'll talk to you about that in just a minute. I want to get back to the evaluation of my time, because maybe if I share with you what I did, it might help you as well. I sat down and said, how many hours are there in a week? How many hours do I sleep? How many do I need for, personal care, personal objectives, my Bible time, my church time, time with family, phone calls, those kinds of things. And chores, the vacuuming, the dusting, all those kinds of things, swishing the toilets, all that fun stuff. So how much time could I allocate to that? And what time does that leave me for work? Okay, so I have X amount of time for work. What percentage of that is going to go to the Longarm business, Quilter for Hire, and what percentage of that is going to go to the charity quilts, Avery Quilts, and then what percentage of that goes to just Lakeside Quilt Making Arts, which is the creative aspect of what I do here, just producing. Right now it's the Mars quilt that I'm trying to focus on, because that was something that was very important to me, is to this year, to not start anything new. I like all these quilts that I've started. I want to see them not be orphans. I don't want them to go into, a drawer somewhere that someone's going to one day take out of my drawer and send to a thrift store and someone else is going to pick up. I want to finish them. I like them. So I've got to stay focused. I can't start anything new, but there's a lot of new things I want to start. So I got to get these things done. And I need to be producing. Where's my time going? So when I did this evaluation, and it showed me that I had 29 hours, it was like every time I looked at my spreadsheet that I did, and I had to make it colorful. So the flow of what I was doing would pop out at me and I didn't have to hunt through words. I wanted to see color. I wanted it to have negative space and not just be words on paper. I needed to see, it needed to be very visual for me. I'm a visual person. So I created this flow flow chart of my time and how to use it. And when I put that on there, that I had creativity time, it was like being liberated. So every time I look at that thing, I look at my schedule, that flow chart, whatever you want to call it, I just have to look and see what I'm supposed to be doing at that moment or that day. I have X amount of time per day. How much of that time is supposed to go to this project or that project or this project? If I'm not at a doctor's appointment and I'm home, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So it kind of tells me that if I follow this chart, it's all going to get done. And that it's okay to go and quilt. It's okay to go in peace. It's okay to go and work on the long arm and just explore because it's scheduled. It's in there. I've done the numbers. I've crunched the numbers and they say you've got time to do it. But do they? If those hours were there already and I wasn't getting all that done, I wasn't so good at getting all that done anyway. I was doing it kind of not really helter skelter, but I was doing it in a less formal way. And part of it, like I said, is because there's a lot of changes and the changes in the studio. But now, the excuses need to go out the window. Let's get serious about this. So if I have this time, 29 hours, I should be able to produce things, right? And let me just tell you another trick I did. When I saw that 29 hours and it kind of triggered something in me and it made me feel empowered that I actually have time to just enjoy myself in the studio and not just try to figure out how to make content for you guys. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So what I did, I didn't want to forget about that. It was a very empowering thing. So what I did is I told my Alexa to remind me every day that I have 29 hours in which I can be creative. I put it on Siri on my calendar and I put it on Alexa so I can be reminded twice a day that I have 29 hours to create. It's like saying to a child, go play. You don't have to clean up your room, go play. Wonderful. But the only way that's going to happen is if I don't spend as much time editing and as much time on camera as I used to do. And so I'm trying to get more structured with that part of my life. So you may see some changes to our videos. I'm going to make sure that I'm more concise. I'm going to be trying to do more thinking ahead of time so I do less rambling. That's going to be hard because I just like chatting with you guys. But I want my editing to go smoothly so I can spend more time creating. And that's because I know that how much it meant to me when I saw on paper that I had 29 hours to create. Well, I've got to protect that. If I spend any of that time editing, I've got less time to create. So you're going to see our videos a little different. I'm going to try to stick to bullets and I'm going to try to stick to a schedule of when things are going to air. Monday is Avery Quilt's Quilter for Hire videos will go out on Wednesday, and then Lakeside Quilt Making Arts go out on Friday. And then in between, I'm just trying to make some Instagram posts and Facebook posts that kind of motivate or give you a chuckle or something like that. Just trying to make some contact with you on that level as well. That's something I haven't had time for in the past. So if I can make my videos quicker, then I've got more time to sit down and create. So that gets us back to where we are here. Why am I behind this machine and this iron on my cutting table? This was supposed to be a cutting table, right? Yes and no. I knew I would need a large space. I knew that I wanted flexibility in the studio, which is one of the things that was just a driving factor for me. If I had all the space, let's figure out how to use it well. And so I knew that if I were to lay something down, a quilt, I need to measure it or whatever. Sometimes you have a lot of fabric you're dealing with. So a large area was good. And I also thought at the time, it would be interesting to see if I think I could sew sitting in a stool or standing up right here. And I kind of forgotten about it. But when I came up here, what day was it? I think it was last Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, I think it was Saturday to work on my Mars quilt. And I made some of this and I made two other pieces that are underneath the camera. So I'm not going to move the camera to show them to you. It wore me out because I was having to stand where you are now at the cutting table, cut something, walk over to the sewing machine, sit down, and it's on a high nap carpet, so the wheels kind of drag, and so it's harder to roll it in and out. And sew for 5 seconds because these seams are not very big, right? These are, each one doesn't take very long at all. And then come back over here, find another piece of fabric to cut into. There's no way to really to do this as some kind of assembly line. Each piece has to be cut out individually from the previous one and from the next one. And that's just something that takes a lot of up and down. Unless I figured out how to have my cutting surface and my ironing surface and my sewing surface all on the same level. Now, where I have my other machine, I could put one of those little design boards that's got a stack of units on it that I can then piece together. But that's good if you've got something that's kind of got a pattern and assembly line aspect to it. But with what I'm doing here on this Mars quilt, it just doesn't work out that way. You got to have a mess. There's like 8 different fabrics kind of piled up over here, right? And then I've got a stack of the ones I haven't gotten into yet. It's just messy. It needs space. Going up and down to sit in front of the other machine wore me out. Like I have neurological weakness in my legs. They don't last long in walking or anything. Like they're just going to get really, really tired really quickly, and it is a struggle then to use them for the rest of the day. So that just doesn't make sense. Like, how am I ever going to finish this quilt? I really want to finish this quilt. So this was a solution. I haven't used it yet because it took me a while to figure out that this is what I was going to do. While I was trying to work on a solution, and this solution came to mind, I was loading a quilt on the Longarm. I loaded Vicky Joe's quilt, the one that I've been telling you guys. It was going to be so much fun to work on because I was going to get to experiment with some custom work, and I did that. I'll show you a video clip about that. I really am having a good time with that. I noticed my thread was breaking like left and right. So I finally figured out it's probably needles. I probably needed to go and get some needles. So I did that yesterday. And oh, I got something else. Let me show you. So these are the needles. They're size 16 and they're called ballpoint. So when I stopped by my mentor's yesterday to pick up this, I asked her about which needles to get because I told her which thread I'm using. It's kind of got a metallic feel to it, but it's not. She says it just has that's kind of a sheen, but it's not metallic at all. And that number 16 is all I needed, and I'd be fine with this. So I got 2 packs. What she does is she puts in a new needle every Monday. She starts the week with a new needle. Now, she's producing more than I am right now because, like I've told you, she's been at this over 30 years. She's got a good customer base filled up. You know, her dance card is full. Mine's wide open right now. So while I was there, I went to pick this up. And I know you're probably like me, like part of the appeal of all the yarns and the threads and the fabrics and the quilted quilts, not just the quilt tops, is the texture, just how it feels. It just says comfort, and it's just so appealing to the eye too. I know it works on so many of the senses, right? Well, this thing right here does too. This is a thread guide for Filtech Habdash. Look at this. Doesn't that just make you want all the threads? How many pages? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 16 pages. The back is different. It doesn't have any of the actual threads on it. What this means to me is possibilities. I mean, like I'm guessing that some of you are like I am. You go to a Home Depot or Lowe's or Sherwin-Williams or wherever, and you just look at all the paint chips and you say, oh, the possibilities. You just want them all. They look so awesome. And you can envision your room looking like this or looking like that. That's kind of what this is. This is the paint chips, you know. You can just see the potential of what you can do. And that's why quilting is so important, you know, and having the right thread really is critical. Having the right design really is critical. I'm just thrilled to have this, you know, because it just expands my horizon of what all the possibilities are. So I am thrilled about that. I have a lot of threads, but looking at this, I can tell I don't have them all. I have not yet changed out the needle to see if that's what was going on with my Longarm and why it was breaking the thread left and right, but I'll do that and report to you in the next video. because I think that is what's going on. It would go just a couple inches and then it would break a thread. And so I really think it is a dull needle because it had been a little bit. I remember thinking that I was going to change out that needle and I didn't. So I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Sometimes when you get a lot of thread breakage, all happening in one area and pretty quickly, you just need to shut down the machine, clean everything, clean your bobbin out, change your needle, check your tension, check how the machine is threaded and all those little details. It's a workhorse of a machine, so you got to take care of it. You got to keep that machine fed with some love and care. Let's go on over to the Longarm so you can see what I was talking about getting onto Vicky's quilt. At first, I think we're going to look at the practice quilt that we did before we got to Vicky's. There's something I wanted to do on Vicky's quilt that I wanted to practice first. So I'd gotten this cheap fabric. I think I told you guys about that. And I wanted to work on building a border. I've watched some videos on how to do that, but the problem that I encountered on what I laid out to be my border is that the width of the border going vertical was much greater than the height of the border that was going horizontally. So my designs weren't working out properly, but I experimented enough to where I feel comfortable moving forward with her quilt. But I wanted to go ahead and experiment with some other things. Here, I just said, okay, this is a complete practice quilt, so this is great time to just practice some free motion quilting. This is my very, very, very first attempts at doing that. I learned here that just because you didn't put in a design doesn't mean my gears are not engaged. So as I was trying to do circles, I created these beautiful designs. I really like this filler. You may see me do this in the future. I like it a lot. But I said, okay, so I got to disengage my gears. Then what does that look like? And I just wanted to get a feel for how it flowed, how my shoulder worked with it. Because, I've been describing, I've had a lot of problems with this shoulder and rib. And it was a non-issue pretty much for this little bit that I did anyway. And so I experimented just doing circles and seeing if I could just be free-spirited about it and trying not to even care what it looked like or anything. And so I was able to accomplish this. And then I came over here and I thought, well, let's just fill in this area. Well, my loops went into this square over here, which was fine. So I said, let's just go with it. But it just flowed so well, and I was kind of pleased that my circles were smooth circles. I was more pleased with that than I was worried about the fact that, see, this is my line going right here. It's in pink. I don't know if you can tell. I really didn't care. This is a practice quilt. No one's going to be seeing it besides my dogs and I. And so I thought, well, let's just kind of see what it looks like to fill in here. And I didn't have any goal to achieve as I did it. I just did some swoopies. Did the same thing up here. And I was encouraged by how good that felt. I will experiment more later. So I had a square like this, or a section like this on the other side to fill in. So I came up here this morning to do this side and decided to treat it a little differently. I went ahead and I did fill in this area. I did that as a pro stitcher design. I thought, okay, this is a good time for me to work with the setting up an area using the multi-point and to skew a pattern inside there. And it went pretty smoothly. There was no big issue, so I feel comfortable with that as well. So now that I have an entire row here, and of course, yes, I am leaving this section over here undone because at some point I'm going to come back and turn my quilt and I will do that section on the horizontal. I just am going to keep this as my practice quilt as I need to load it to practice things. I'm not going to try to fill it and get it off here and get it bound or anything. I'm just going to keep this as my practice fabrics. So I'm going to take it off the frame now and then I'm going to load Vicky's. But as I do, you may want to see what I've done on the top. I'll show you that. So it's off the Longarm now, and I will fold it up and save it for when I need to do more practice work or, just have a desire to be at the Longarm and don't have a client project or anything. So I was just experimenting. I chose a different design for every section. And my objective was when I was done with everything I was doing horizontally, I would turn the quilt and then do the sides because your machine goes from left to right, it goes horizontally. I would fill in this area after I get all the internal area done, and I would turn the quilt. And you'll see that we're going to do that with Vicky's too. Hey, my friends, since we're talking about long arming and quilts, this is a great time for me to remind you about my special deal for new customers. And it's just 1.8 cents per square inch. That's a deal I'm thrilled to extend to you. It's a cost savings for you because I think you're worth it, your quilt's worth it, and I want to foster a new relationship with new customers. Kind of new on the scene, so my dance card's kind of open, which is your gain. Until my dance card gets filled up, that means you guys get a cost savings. I'm offering to you a deal, a heck of a deal, 1.8 cents per square inch. You send your quilt to me, I do an edge to edge on it. We'll talk about the thread, we'll talk about the design if you want, or I'll just take care of it for you. I love that part of it. And then I will put it in the mail right back to you. You cover the cost of shipping to me and back. And generally, you can do that around $16 for the return quilt, and around that or much less to send just the flimsy to me. I can source the batting. I love Kyoto bamboo. Oh, it's so nice. And I also love Windland. So if you want a really nice batting that really makes a difference, just let me pick that up at my local quilt store. You don't even have to send that to me. If your quilt top isn't quite ready to send this video on to a friend who might have one ready. 1.8 cents per square inch for new customers. That's a deal. Keep that needle moving. I'll see you in the next video. And in between videos, I'm going to be checking my inbox, see if I got an email from you. See you soon. I'm going to get back to it.